Welcome. The Leadership Lesson podcast inspires leadership growth in everyone. We have enthralling conversations with top leaders in order to provide you with life-changing lessons. My name is Caleb Nichols. I'm a speaker, a pastor, and a family man. My hope is to inspire spiritual depth and leadership growth in you. I love to sit down with leaders from a variety of fields, hear their personal stories and leadership experiences. This creates the podcast. Enjoy. Well, I've got Dal and Wilksch with me today. This is going to be really fun, Dal. We're going to talk about intimacy in marriage or in relationships, and a bit about sex, a bit about communication, a little bit about that marriage kind of stuff. So tell us a bit about you, Dal. You've been married for a while.
I have, yeah. I've been married to my husband, Chris, for, it's actually 30 years next month, which is, unbelievable. So that's been quite a journey. It's been good. We were farmers for 21 years. And,
that's amazing.
Have 4 children, 4
and
adult
now you live
children.
in the big city.
We do. The big city of Frankston.
So very different.
It's very different, yes. Yeah, it's been a nice change though. It's been good.
And you've got 4 kids, and they're the same gender order as my kids.
Yeah.
I've just had my 4th.
Yes.
And they're the same. So you're going to be able to help me a lot, and especially your son Denzel is going to be able to help my one son among 3
That's
daughters.
Right. Yeah.
Jedediah.
They need to get together and Dens could give him some pep talks, I'm sure.
3 sisters all around you, full on.
Oh my gosh, yeah, a lot of fun. It's great.
And Dal does a bunch of stuff with us here at the church, which is great, and a bit of life coaching, working with married couples. What's that like, working with married couples, counselling? How do you find that?
Yeah, it's been, it's definitely a challenging role. So I've been coaching for probably, 5 or 6 years, and I think generally I've always had a bit of an interest in the area and started to work with relationships and marriages. Of course, the more you go into that, the more you realise you don't know. And
it's like anything in life, isn't it?
Totally, it really is. And that's been just a beautiful journey though. I've really enjoyed it. It's been incredibly challenging. Quite painful sometimes, being quite involved intimately in some couples at some really painful, times in their life, but also very kind of honoured place, really, to be in that place. So you'd know. And
that. I do a lot of that as well with counselling and couples, and also a lot of work with pre-married or pre-living together couples, as you've done a bit. We've helped some couples together a bit, and that's really interesting too, especially when they're young adults, or maybe it's even their first serious relationship, and they're walking that path of how the intimacy usually starts with friendship and conversations, and it builds into love and romance. And it's what would you say is the greatest challenge as you sit with couples and hear about their struggles and try and help them a bit? Like, is there things that tend to pop up regularly?
I think they end up becoming in a place of pain and a past pain that enters their relationship. They haven't been able to resolve issues, so the blame game starts to come in, and so it becomes a lot of defensiveness, really, which flows into criticism.
Why is that? Why are we so defensive? Like, we go, like a young man goes out into all this effort to sweep a woman off her feet, and they fall in love, and then they end up a few years later blaming each other and criticising, and like what happens there, Dal? Yeah,
it's you do wonder what happened actually.
I think sometimes people they simplify it too quickly into like, we fell out of love.
Absolutely.
It's like, really? So you were in love and then you just fell out, and it's not that, is it?
It isn't that. Although, at the early stages of a relationship, it's that very illuminated sort of time, and it's so basically everything that the other person does is wonderful. We never can see their faults.
That's
we don't see any of that, because we want this relationship to work. We want to make it the one, because it's we're putting a lot of hope in it. So
that's true.
Yeah. So
you're saying that the effort stops?
Yeah, I think
or the mystery disappears.
Exactly. The mystery, the familiarity starts to set in. We start to get a bit tired of the habits that come in. And I think that's a really big issue, is the familiarity is the thing that really, you know, we get lazy. We sort of get discontent, you know, we get tired of, you know, the things that they do when we whinge, but then we don't ask if they can change even, you know, we just whinge that they don't. You know, so communication becomes poorer, I think, you know, that like the defensive language, the blaming starts to come in, the withdrawing and withholding of love is a really big part of it too, which, you know, that's real trouble then when, you know, that withholding and, you know, this is where the sexuality comes in, the sex, the withholding of intimacy starts to pull apart because, you know, parts of us want to punish in some way or,
So would you say then that the sexual side of a marriage or relationship is somewhat of a barometer for how the relationship's going?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. Okay. Absolutely.
So how does that work? Talk us through that a bit. What have you seen?
Well,
what do you know?
I think, you know, it's such a fallacy to think that we go, well, we don't have sex, but our marriage is fine.
Okay, yeah.
And that's, show me, how is that fine? You know, what's really going under the surface for the guy? You know, women can be happily go without sex. You know, they move along through life, got the children, and can happily sit in that place. Men, on the other hand, can't as much. And
I testify to that.
it's tough. And so to live in this space where we think, well, marriage isn't important, but we have a great relationship. Sorry, sex isn't important, but we have a great marriage. I doubt that that's really
So
true.
why is sex important then outside of procreation?
Yeah.
This is the obvious, like, have sex to have children, and that's often a big part of a relationship.
Yeah.
But that's also very, you know, you only have to have sex successfully once to get a
True.
child.
It's true.
But so why is it important beyond that? Like, I think sometimes we understand it more from the maybe the erotic kind of like fun adventure, you know, experience side of things. But like, you know, a marriage isn't often like that, you know, because you're talking decades.
Exactly.
You're talking, you know, so why is it important in just a normal rhythm of a marriage?
Sex is that deep place of connection. It's really connecting together. It's very spiritual. It's, you know, I heard the Jews talk about it as the Shekinah. It's the place where God dwells. Even you know, that's how important it is in the Jewish culture. And why isn't it as important in our culture that it's a dwelling place? It's a deep place of connection and of actually being able to cast everything aside and say, you're important to me. You know, this is who I want to spend my life with, and we're going to connect together in this way. And to be able to let go of your own issues and problems and, you know, in a selfless act, be able to give to the other is, you know, quite powerful and only going to enrich the marriage, the relationship.
So you're saying there that there's a lot more implied than maybe people see on the surface with sex. So it's not. So maybe we're a bit shallow in our approach. We look at it more as a physical thing, but in a marriage, in a healthy marriage, or as far as intimacy goes, it's actually saying a lot more. Yeah,
it's a real barometer. It's a real. It's a way of being able to. I think if you have a healthy relationship where and a healthy, you know, self-awareness within yourself, you can start to sort of go, I know I need this, we need this in our marriage, we need this to keep connected, to keep our walk together as one. You know, like I said, it's a very spiritual thing. So if we're, you know, become one in a marriage, you know, we need to physically become one. We need to, you know, keep going in that direction, because the more we don't proceed like that, we start to look to other things. We're going to look for other things to fill our needs, to fill those pains and hurts and, you know, all the rejection that the particularly, well, both sides have, basically, both male and female will suffer rejection massively. And that's the thing too, is that relationships, marriages, it's so deeply personal. And, you know, with, I know with couples I've talked with, and, you know, they're not Christian, they're not, you know, they don't have all sorts of backgrounds. And, you know, and every male would say, it's not just the sex. It's not just the sex. It is the intimacy that they crave, and that place of being, you know, really loved, really nurtured is really huge. Nurturing each other's, you know, just that love and affection towards each other, which is so vital. Yeah.
So you said that maybe there's a little bit of difference in how male and female approach or understand it. Like, what do you see when you're counselling, or what do you see as the different approach?
Yeah. The way women would see sex. Yeah. So for women, you know, obviously at the start, there's always going to be that deep attraction, and there's a physical attraction towards the other sex, and the early parts of a relationship, whether it's you know, a partnership or a marriage, there's going to be a lot of physical interaction, a lot of sex going on. There's a lot of that because it's hormonal and it's exciting. As certainty, I would say, as certainty starts to really come into play with the relationship, it's a very big, important part of the way women function. They need a lot of certainty in their life. So they've got their partner, they're settled. Men still need we'll still have a lot more of a higher sexual desire than women, and unfortunately miss out in that way, because women become settled in the certainty, in the day to day, and having the children. You know, you get tired, you're physically tired, you start to have like kids clambering all over you, the stresses of life, and that becomes all consuming. So the thought of having intimacy with your husband is just like the last thing on your mind.
That's where the headache
That's
comes
right.
into it.
Yeah, the headache.
So can I venture into the female world a bit? I might get in trouble when my wife watches this, but so when the hey honey, I've got a headache, I can't, or I'm tired, I can't. So when we get to that, which kind of every relationship gets to,
Absolutely.
right? And the reason these things become, you know, a joke, because they're kind of iconic of, you know, of reality, I suppose. So what's really going on for a woman at that point? Because you know, I'm sure in a decent marriage they want to have sex, not they don't want to. You know, why do they get to that point of like they don't want to very often, or they have a headache all the time, or you know, is it just a sex drive thing? Is there more?
It's, you know, we for women, physiologically, we have our sexual arousal, sexual desire in two parts of our body. So obviously, sexual arousals in the genitals, sexual desires in the head, and so it becomes harder to become sexually aroused when you move along in your relationship, because of the familiarity, because of, you know, the tiredness, fatigue. It just doesn't happen as quickly and as easily, because the thought of it.
Doesn't.
No,
Okay.
not for women. Not for women.
Because there's more going on.
Exactly.
There's more responsibilities.
Yeah.
You're not 19 anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of like discovering yourself a bit. Yeah.
Yes.
So as responsibility increases, maybe it decreases the arousal.
Yeah, and that initial formative part of the relationship, that is that very exciting, and it's that you want to capture the man as well, and so you know, your arousal's there to really cement something, and then that just sort of just fades away. And so I think that's the mistake too, is that women start thinking, well, I'm just not, you know, just not attracted, not feeling it, not attracted. So when we start to recognise that we actually, sexual desire is in our brain,
very good,
and that we can actually go, okay, I can make a choice here.
Okay, that's great.
You know, I can choose to turn toward my partner. I can choose to, you know, I don't overly feel like it, but when I choose and when I move toward the person, I will, you know, initiating it, and it comes.
The arousal follows.
Arousal follows. You know, we actually have to make a choice first and not just rely on our arousal.
You're making it sound so simple.
Well,
I'm sure women are throwing things at their screens right now.
Well, yeah.
Because, you know, this is not good ammunition for men. I'm joking about it, but so many things in life are like that. You know, like my wife's a psychologist, Zoe, you know her, and she often, you know, people often struggle with motivation.
Yes.
And it's something you know, to get a job or to, you know, mental health and whatever.
Yes.
But motivation is one of those things that doesn't happen until you start.
Yes.
Like you'll never be motivated.
Yes.
It's like the gym scenario.
Yes.
No one ever wakes up wanting to go to the gym really or exercise.
Yes.
But once you start, you're like, oh, I feel good.
Yeah.
And then you finish and you got the endorphins. You're like, man,
Yeah.
this is amazing. I'm going to get super fit.
Yeah.
I'm going to eat well tonight.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what you're saying. You can make a mental choice.
Yeah.
And then as you choose.
Yes.
And so for a woman then in that scenario, and obviously we're not trying to generalise that everyone is like exactly what we're saying, but generally this might be how it is. A woman in that scenario then is going to have to think more through mentally the big picture of the relationship and sex and intimacy in the relationship and focus less on I feel aroused,
Exactly.
I feel like I want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I think, you know, and men can be like that too, but really it is for, you know, as a woman, knowing what it is like, that it is that you have to be intentional. You have to live a life that you're prepared to constantly choose to turn toward, even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah,
you know,
that.
I was with a girlfriend a few months ago. We're out at a pub for lunch, and she came up behind. She just laughed and laughed. There was a table of more mature women than me and her, probably in their 60s, and she just overheard one of them saying, yeah, sex is a bit like ironing. You don't look forward to it, but it's great when you get it done. So, and I just thought, yeah, well, you know, if it works for her, then. But it is true, like it.
So a bit more like it can become a bit of a chore. It's just another thing.
Yeah.
Feed the family,
Exactly.
iron the clothes, have sex with my husband.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really sad.
Yeah. But it's good she does, so that's great. But you
so what
know,
about the woman who's sitting there going, yeah, but I don't want it to be like that.
Yeah.
How do I get the, you know, the excitement? Yeah, I don't like pornography, and I don't want to like go and, you know, do something I'm not. And you know, but you got those great women, great wives, great partners who are like, I don't have the feelings, I don't have the natural arousal, but I want our, and it's not about her or him being better, but it's about, I want our relationship to be healthier.
Yes.
So what do you say to that woman?
I think understanding around sensuality, like knowing that you can actually work on your sensuality and your senses, and you know, there's some, you know, I've probably read gallons of books, but just understanding your body and the way it works and why and your function, and understanding that you actually can do something about it, and you can actually start to do your own exercises. You can start to discover what are the senses that makes you feel sensual, what makes you feel like a woman, what makes you feel like you could really go into that place. And it is not always about what makes you feel sexual, but what makes you feel like you've got all your senses, you're in touch with yourself. And so when you become sensual, you will start to become, it's such a mindful thing of becoming aware of what that means, and then, well, if I become sensual, can I start to work towards becoming a sexual woman and start to recognise my sexuality and embrace it more than shun it away as something like, I just don't ever want to think about it. You know, who do you want to become? Do you want this relationship to be
really good?
You know, just this stale kind of relationship, and you know, the partner the eye starts to wander, and you know, other things start to come in place, and you know, the partner might choose to look at porn, or you know, pursue an extramarital affair, and all those sorts of things, which is really it's so tragic, because that's tragic, but there's also all these other things that are going on, and you know, and it's not the lack of sex, but it's the sense of rejection that really can dive deep in a lot of men, and you know, and for women. But it's just that sense, well, I need that craving for connection, you know, craving for intimacy, you know, and there's a great book out called Not Just Friends by Shirley Glass, who's passed away now, and a Catholic woman who did her PhD on extramarital affairs at a Catholic university. But a fascinating book, and really she does a big deep dive in all that area, and just really it becomes around the need for intimacy, and that's what they're craving more and more. It's really, like, it's true when people say it's not really about the sex, but that craving for intimacy.
I really like how you've been talking today about sex being a barometer, though, because then it is a measure of something. Yes. But then, like you're saying there, but it's not everything.
Yes.
So, like, and I think maybe sometimes relationships make it too much about sex.
Yes.
Or as you've mentioned, it's not enough about sex in the sense that it just becomes a chore, it becomes a have to, or it becomes something we did when we were young.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So tell me, before we move on, we've talked a bit about women. Well, where do men stuff up in this area? Like, where do men not help? Where do men, you know, misunderstand it? I'm a man.
Yes.
And, you know, I often don't like falling into the caricature of a man being, you know, stupid or whatever, because men aren't like that. They're very intelligent, whatever. But, you know, a problem that we do have to watch out as men, I have to watch out to, is not being stupid. Also, not just, you know, thinking through everything as a problem and a solution. And so approach sex as, it's not ideal, this is how I'm going to fix it. And my wife's opinion, I don't really understand it anyway, this is how we're going to fix it, do X. Like, that might be one example, but where do men miss it? Where do men misunderstand themselves when it comes to this, or maybe misunderstand their partner?
A lot, I think a lot. There's a few things. There's what they believe about sex growing up, and this is for women as well, of course, but what their opinion of sex is. Have they watched a lot of pornography? You know,
it's quite distorting.
Very distorting of what sex is, when it's really so distorted. There's nothing the same.
Well, nowadays, not to harp on about this, but it's just a great point, because nowadays you've got your first watch of pornography. I think average age is 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And a kid could have watched 5 or 6 years, 7 years of solid porn, hardcore porn, before they've even had a sexual encounter.
Yeah.
Like, they haven't even kissed anyone. They've watched hardcore porn for 6 years. So, like, how can you come out of that and see sex in any kind of healthy, accurate way?
Exactly.
Like, you're already so far behind the 8 ball.
And really, there's there's been a lot of research in this, but you know, all that porn, it's sexual abuse as well, and particularly men, but girls more and more. Females watch porn as well, and they're really sexually abused, completely distorted in the way they view sex.
Well, 90% of it, from what I hear, or statistically, is abusive or violent pornography. You know, like it's abusive, strangling, whatever. It's just crazy. But anyway, back to our question. So men, where do men stuff up?
So I think...
Enlighten me. Help me.
You know, men... it's all about understanding. Do some research on what where's that movie? What makes women?
Oh, what do women want?
What do women want? Oh, you know, I have never actually watched that. It's just come to mind. But actually work out and communication. Like, what does your wife enjoy? What do they need? You know, what will make this you know, great for both of, you know, both of you. And, you know, the thing for it, it has to be a team. It has to be a great self-awareness for both in choosing to be willing to go, no, we want this to be great.
Yeah.
We don't want this to be half-baked. You know, we're only 5 years in, we're only 10 years into marriage or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, what about 20, 30, 40 years of marriage? You know, do we want this to be something that is only going to grow and intensify? Or are we just going to, you know, not understand what is going to be fully pleasurable and enjoyable for our partner? So I think there is a little bit of a lack of understanding because men just become aroused so quickly. There's no understanding of a woman functions very, very differently. And, you know, I think that if
so men have almost oversimplified it.
Yeah.
It's like I can do it anytime,
Exactly.
anywhere kind of thing.
Doesn't
It is weird because, like I say to my wife, like, honestly, if I had the flu and was really sick, but you want to have sex, I'd probably be fine. Like,
it's true.
Like
it's
where,
true.
you know, it's just so different. So maybe men oversimplify it because of, I suppose, like anything in life, we project how we understand or how we feel, how we process onto someone else.
Yes.
And what you're saying is, well, women are so different.
Yes.
So ask them questions, learn.
Learn.
But then for the man and the woman, it's about understanding each other and approaching it as a team.
Yes.
And looking at the relationship as, or looking at sex and intimacy as an element of the relationship that can be worked on. I really like what you're saying there before when you were talking about women, even like approaching sex as something you can work on, you can improve, you can understand yourself, you can, as opposed to like, I think we've maybe misunderstood sex. This is just coming to mind as we're talking, as something that should be mysterious, unknown, untalked about. You know, why do we talk about other things, Dal? But sex is a bit taboo. Like, what is that?
I don't know why. I was thinking about that this morning. Is why is it left to be shamed upon or either really joked about? You know, I'll go in the car occasionally and one of my, you know, my teenagers flicked onto one of those other channels on the radio, and it's always joked about sex and innuendo and try to really make it fun and lighthearted and
movies, just constantly.
Yeah, don't want to talk about it because I think it's such a vulnerable place, and if it's not looking like we think it should, then you know something's wrong. Something's wrong with us, so we don't want to even talk about it. We feel embarrassed.
Is it the vulnerability, you think?
I think it's deeply vulnerable. Very vulnerable. It's very personal. We want it to be something, but it's not quite like what we hoped it would be like, and so it's very personal. And you know, it just reminded me earlier, like you said, what could men do or learn? I think for women, it's so important to know. And you know, this is really a part of my journey, and you know, this has been over years of thinking about this topic because you know, you'd be in a school parent kitchen, you know, and with a bunch of women, and they'll joke about it and going, oh, they want is, you know, like, or they'll want their new couch, so they'll, you know, they'll just give them some sex tonight, so they get their, you know, like, so it becomes this bargaining power. And I was like, oh, that just breaks my heart because the way that they can almost use it as a tool to get something that they want almost, or and not recognise that men are not just. They're not just all about sex. They do need intimacy, and they feel rejection acutely.
Yes.
And I think that that's a real shame. And you know, men feel that, and I see that in relationships, and it can be very painful to watch. And
so why is that? From what you've seen, why is that for a man? Why is rejection particularly painful for men?
I think they're not understood for who they are, and if they've just been bundled as someone who all they want is sex and
it's kind of gorilla that wants sex and then just goes off to work and comes back and has sex and this kind of simplified.
So they're not fully understood. They don't fully understand how to articulate it properly. They haven't been shown. Our society has ripped off men big time, and you know, I felt that really strongly. There's been this kind of push with, and it's a good one, you know, that the anti-porn and a lot of men watching it and how it's really corrupted the guys, and we need to stick up for the girls, and I really like that, but I actually do grieve for the guys, because I think that they have been incredibly ripped off in this society, and they don't know how to even approach it. You know, they've only shown one way, you know, and their dads are probably going, oh, you know, like encouraging it as well.
Exactly. Well, I think it's a challenge in our culture, because one, we don't have, in our Western culture, we don't have rites of passage.
Yeah.
So there's no clear way to know when you're a man or a woman, really.
Yeah.
And so the default for men does generally become sex. So through the footy club or through dad, it's kind of like, you know, having sex or conquering a woman in that sense, and being able to tell your mates about it, kind of becomes this difference between a boy and a man.
Yes.
And it's very hardwired.
Yes.
And I've spent all my life in soccer clubs and stuff like that. It's so evident, it's there all the time. It's very vulgar, it's full on. It's very, and when I was 15, 16, 17, you know, a nice Christian kid who grew up in the church, like it was just very difficult. I had no idea how to process the language, the talk, the whatever. And it's not until you get older that you realise most of it was just talk.
Yes.
But when you're 17, you think, man, everyone must be having this amazing sex everywhere. And it's like, then you get older, you realise, you know, 95% of it was just lies. But that's the thing, because it's about showing your manhood.
Yes.
And that's done through, you know, the sexual thing. So we kind of, we encourage men to be like this. But then in a long-term relationship, that's like the opposite of what's going to help.
Yeah.
Being the bravado man who's going to now conquer his wife, who's had 4 children, and have sex with her, so you can go tell your mates, like, that's not going to fly in a marriage. Yeah. You know, but that's what's being produced, and now that's not okay.
Yes.
You know, so it's like, you know, and I think the whole economy of sex is interesting, because it probably is similar to the point I'm making there. So we don't want men to be these gorillas that are all about sex and want them to be nice dads and husband or whatever. But then the economics of sex is that when you're a young adult, there is all these women out there offering cheap sex, so to speak. Yeah. You go to a nightclub, you pick up a girl, you have sex, and so that's kind of the economy. So why should men perform, you know, when it comes to the side of being a gentleman or being a great father, or, you know, that's the economic bit, because it's been cheap, it's been easy, it's been available, women have been there, and then all of a sudden it flips, and now women don't want a man who's sleeping around, they want a man who's faithful, you know, but men have only been taught that, you know, sex is easy to get, and if I don't get it at a nightclub picking someone up, then I'll just watch porn, and you know, so like it's difficult for men, I suppose, to have a pathway forward when the culture and the economics of sex, cheap sex, available sex, doesn't really pull the best out of them. It doesn't cause them to rise. It doesn't cause them to do better. It doesn't cause them. I mean, men don't really, from what I see, Dale, really sweep women off their feet anymore in that sense.
No.
But you don't have to.
No.
You just go have sex, find a woman, play video games, do not much, and some woman will tolerate you, like
for a time,
I think,
and then you know, it doesn't take too many years, and it all starts to go haywire in relationships, because, you know, unfortunately, men haven't been taught how to be a man in society, and how to really show up, and what that looks like. And you know, I've worked with a few young men in their mid to late 20s, and just their low self-esteem. You know, they hide away in their room, and they're on the gaming, and not prepared to show up in life and what that looks like. And you know, I show my clients a matrix of what self-esteem looks like, and you know, what happens when you show up, as opposed to when you hide away, and you know, and you're in fear, you're isolated, you know, you become depressed, you know, and they all recognise it, and it's the biggest slap in the face for them, because, and I say to them, I'm devastated. I'm devastated that you haven't been taught that, you know, this is what happens when you do show up, when you actually take on demanding things in life and the challenges in life. And, you know, are you prepared to take on the challenge of a marriage, and and I've talked to a number of young ones who have just married and are absolutely freaking out. Well done.
But it's funny because it's true. Like, I mean, it's funny how life creates a natural pathway of growth opportunities.
Yeah.
You become an adult at 18, and then you take on a job, and then you take on a partner, and then you have kids, and like it's progressively increasing responsibility that requires you to grow up, mature, develop your character. And it's funny how life has that. But when people miss these markers, or when they get to the new marker, like I'm now married, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't know what the purpose is. And I kind of just did it because that's what you do. And then they fail, say, at that marker.
Yes.
So then it's going to be very hard to move on to being a great dad, to raising, a few kids that are really, well-balanced kids. And then when you get down to these details of sex and intimacy in the relationship 10 years down the track, it's like, it's already a disaster, and they don't have the tools or the skills to deal with it anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Because what happens is that, exactly like you said, they confront the things in life, the challenges, and there's that idea that if I don't know what to do, it must mean I'm a failure. So I won't show up, and more the partner will kind of hide away, divert to their comfort, to their hideaway place. And, the female partner often then withholds love, withholds the sex too, which just perpetuates the whole situation more and more.
So is that a real thing? Like again, as a man, I'm going into the secret women's area, but like you hear this term, women are the gatekeeper of sex. Like, is that true? Like, you're kind of saying that there. Like, how does that work? And
I think
is that a good thing, a bad thing? Or is it just how it is?
Unfortunately, I think it is how it is, and I think that that term, the gatekeeper, withholding, if I'll feel like it if I get what I want, or if I, if you've been nice to me, or if I've been, kind, or I mean, that's all part of it. You need that, but it's a very true thing. I think that and I often talk to couples, in a relationship, you can be working on things, but never withhold your love toward each other, because, that becomes that danger battlefield, and all of a sudden, even the bed becomes this, battleground, and this lines down the middle, and, well, I'm not giving you anything. Like, it becomes this, I'll give you if you do what I want, and then they're playing it, as a puppet, or on tender hooks, because if I say the right thing tonight, I might get something.
So the minute that sex becomes a bargaining chip, you're in trouble. It's never going to work well, is it?
No, and I've definitely seen that over.
I suppose it's just an easy. Again, we fall into this in marriage, don't we? Over the journey, like, it just becomes lazy. It's just an easy go-to bargaining chip.
Yes.
It's there. And I think that probably, my understanding of men, that feeds into that rejection thing you were saying. When a woman goes to that, or a man, it could happen both ways, but when they go to that lazy option of using sex either to withhold it, or even to use it as a criticism, or something over the other person, you never fulfill me, or you're not good enough, or the minute that happens, that bargaining chip is used, it feeds into that. I mean, for a man, that rejection thing. It's like, why would you use something is a big part of who I am as a man, use that against me? Like, it's very, seems vicious, nasty. Like, it's just an easy way to hurt me. Like, it's a real challenge.
It is. Massive challenge.
So what else would you like to talk about intimacy?
I think, I guess, with intimacy, we come in with great ideas, and thinking it's all going to be great, and sometimes we don't know what we don't know in a relationship, and we can be confronted with things that we're not aware of that's been there in our life. And I think recognising that past relationships, whether it's sexual abuse that's happened within your life, family of origin, whether the kind of talk around sex. Was there talk about sex? Was it, or was it not talked about? Was it kind of shunned? We never speak about sex in the family. So all those sorts of things come into play when we enter a sexual relationship. So all of a sudden these views and opinions and beliefs start to raise their head. And
so again, it's not as simple as just some physical act.
Exactly.
There's all these lifetime of ingredients.
And so you can imagine too, coming in.
Multiplies it.
Yeah. So you got one that perhaps has grown up with watching porn, all that. Another one is like, well, I've never, but they might have, say become Christian and cleaned up their life in some form. One life might have a lot of purity, some facing porn. It becomes quite dangerous in a relationship too, because they don't understand each other, don't know. The whole thinking around sex is, quite distorted on both parts. And so something that they might do to you, you might perceive as, dishonouring. But they might just think it's fine,
And it's often not something talked about. So therefore, it's you can't get on the same page with anything in a relationship without good communication. Especially in this sexual area.
Exactly.
So what do you see as the effects of negative sexual experiences? So if there's been child abuse, if there's been maybe a lot of people fall into relationships when they're young that become a bit abusive, or sex is used weirdly, and sometimes it's just the product of being 19, 20 and you get caught in some weird relationship with some weird guy or girl or something, or maybe you just thought, like I was saying before, you just thought that being a man was to go and sleep with heaps of women. So you've slept with 100 women and then you got a bit older and realised, I've just got flashes every day and I just feel really guilty and I did some really dumb stuff, and so you got all this promiscuity clouding your focus a little. You feel dirty maybe, I don't know. Sometimes things like abortion can, there can be negative mental, emotional consequences down the track. There's a lot of evidence around that, and so how do you see that impacting on the sexual side of a relationship? Where do you see that kind of playing out?
Yeah, well, all sorts of what do we call it? I've got it written down here actually. When there's been sexual abuse, that there's that, I'm a bit lost. So when there's sexual abuse and it becomes into a relationship, there's all sorts of triggers that can happen, obviously, different situations that you haven't thought about because you haven't been in that situation, whether it was in a dark room or there was a certain songs playing or you were forced to do a certain act towards someone, a sexual act. And so you may think you're healed in some form, but when you've been then placed into that situation, all of a sudden the triggers start to come, and they can be like, you can feel all sorts of feelings and emotions, you can feel sick physically, and then you can start to think all sorts of things, think that, I'm a bad person, I'm a dirty person, I don't deserve this, so all these start to manifest in the sexual relationship, and that can be a problem if it's not talked about or opened up, because again, the partner can see that as rejection, something's wrong with them, and so that communication again needs to be opened up. It's so, I love one of the quotes, I think Wendy Maltz is amazing. She wrote a book on the sexual healing journey, and she talks about the way when sexual abuse has been made in the light and the communication is opened up, because often sexual abuse is held in secrecy, in darkness, don't talk about it, don't communicate. but once you start to communicate about it, you kind of...
brings healing.
It does. It brings a lot of healing to the place as well.
And is that, would you say that's really the key step? Like, I'm thinking if someone's watching this going, oh, that's a bit like me, or I feel a bit dirty, I've done some silly things, or I've been abused, violated. How do you move from there to, you know, healed? To being healed, or at least on a process of that. You know, what would be your...
To be able to recognise it is fantastic. You know, people start to see it. Awareness in their life is amazing. If they can feel comfortable to communicate it with their partners, incredible. I really believe being in a safe place where they can have some counsel around it is so important for the two of them. And there's some amazing different healing exercises that they can go toward in terms of being able to build trust with each other and with themselves, you know, being able to find forgiveness for themselves in what's happened, that what happened to them doesn't define who they are. And so when they can come to that place, and I think again the key word is that willingness to think, I want this relationship to be good. I want this, I want us to have all aspects. I want it to be a good sexual relationship. So if we have that willingness inside of us to be willing to go through some of the painful stuff of healing,
it's very good.
So that we can, you know, move forward and have a really great sexual relationship.
Again, it comes back to the bigger goal or purpose of the relationship. And I think the thing I'm learning today is, you know, the more we focus on sex or the act of sex, you know, probably the less gains we're going to get. But the more we focus on the whole relationship, the purpose of our relationship. So that's a great point there. If you focus on the abuse, it's going to be really painful. But if you focus on, well, who we are as a couple, where we want to go, it's going to hopefully give some motivation to deal with things that are in the road, like abuse or what have you. And I think the people that I've worked with in this area, I think the big challenge is, and you touched on it, the big challenge is just saying it happened and it was wrong. I was violated. And even I've worked with some people and and as crazy as this may sound looking from the outside in, like they haven't even been able to go, it was wrong. Was it wrong? Did I do something? Did I? No, as a 4-year-old you didn't do anything. like literally I've said that to people. It's like, because, and that's very how it's part of the human condition, isn't it? The problem we have as humans and our brokenness is, even if we're abused as a child, we maybe somehow think we brought it on, or we did something wrong, or we should have protected ourselves. But actually there's so much power in going, 1, this happened to me, and 2, it was wrong. It was unjust. I got hurt. It is not how my life should have been. Or even going, I did dumb stuff. I went out and got involved in relationships. I could have got out. I pushed sexual things at times, thinking I was wrong. That was silly. And so that just awareness, diagnosis, acceptance, acknowledgement of the injustice and the hurt, I think from my experience is a really critical. I can't really see how you can go far without that being the first step.
I agree.
You know?
And again, it's that we do lack a lot of understanding around our sexuality and how we function and what we, you know, and that people feel bad because I actually enjoyed it because they were aroused, you know, and that's what happens with grooming. They become aroused and actually enjoy that sensation. And so then they think, well, there must be something wrong with me because I enjoyed it. And so, you know, to understand actually, well, this is the way we function, and that is grooming, and you were touched. Touch is so intimate, so powerful. And for them,
and arousal comes no matter what, whether it's wrong or right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great point.
Exactly. That arousal, because like for women, we have a soul organ that is so totally for arousal and pleasure. And so when that is stimulated, then it's going to be stimulated. And likewise for the guy. So unfortunately, there's that misunderstanding that therefore meant I enjoy it. Somehow I was to blame. And that's what, you know, perpetrators try to do. So, well, you enjoyed it, didn't you? You know?
That's horrible.
So that understanding of how we function, I think, is so powerful. And to go on to that Windy Maltz has some wonderful exercises in very intimate, personal exercises of understanding your own sexuality, being able to build trust with each other in a relationship, that within an intimate relationship that they can trust their partner and that they can be trusted. So, you know, there's some great stuff out there, but it's so vital for, you know, the health of a relationship that those things are really spoken about. Yeah.
So what does a good relationship look like, Dale? Like when you've seen a couple and you've gone, wow, that's, you know, obviously no couple's perfect and everyone's got, but when what does that kind of look like? Maybe you could play that out for us, a bit of a scenario, like a healthy couple that can talk about the sexual side and do have wins in that area.
Yeah, I don't see too many healthy ones.
That's why they see you.
No, that's good.
Or even as just a picture for us, you know, people watching, listening, like what might that look like in a simple terms, a healthy relationship with a healthy sexual side?
I think going in, what you want the relationship to look like, how you feel about the other person, what love means to you with that other person. I think it's important that you can start to then together move together as a team and discuss how you feel and have I think is, you know, down to deep core values of, you know, we want a relationship that has good open communication, that we want to, when there's communication, there's no shame.
Yes.
You know, eradicate the shame that can start to cloud a relationship big time. And I think feeling like when you don't think all is well, to go to a third person, never feel like you can't not go to someone. And you know, I've been seeing a couple who they just want to keep the cogs oiled, so to speak. They just want to keep going, keep it moving, keep picking up on things that they need to work on. And the big thing again is that each person in the relationship is willing, is really willing. And John Gottman talks about speaking to each other with real fondness and admiration, and also that turning toward, you know, you're always falling forward, so to speak. So no matter what is going on, you will always choose to fall forward in your relationship.
So people get stuck when they turn away.
Exactly.
And turning away, what does that look like?
Well, you think about, you know, in a day, each conversation might cause you to turn away. Turn away, turn away. So what's going to happen by the end of the day? There's going to be no intimacy or not even any thoughts of that in that relationship. And so and this comes down to so much self-awareness, just an understanding of, if I do this, if I turn away, is that going to help my relationship? Or if I, you know, or is it going to, you know, push me away from it? If I move toward a relationship, is that going to, what's that going to do for me? You know, constantly choosing. It's laying down our own pride, our pride for being right, our pride of being frustrated at sometimes, you know, to lay it down. And like, my goodness, you know, that takes a lifetime.
It does.
You know, but if you're in it together, you know, and I love that. I mentioned John Gottman earlier. He's an amazing marriage psychologist, relationship psychologist in America, who's done, you know, decades and decades of study in the whole area. And he really talks about that, you know, that constantly, if we move toward each other, then with fondness and admiration and with giving things a priority in life, that sex is a priority in our relationship. And so you can really adjust to that.
It's very good.
And he talks about being able to recognise when your relationship isn't going well, to be able to just go, I said that wrong, you know, let's start again, you know, and that's a really self-aware couple.
I think to be able to do those kind of things is critical, and then as the partner, to be able to not hold that over them
Yeah.
Not bring that up later.
Yes.
Not say, hey, you last week you admitted that you didn't do it right.
Yes.
So again, it comes back to trust and being able to be vulnerable, confess mistakes, apologise, not have it held against you. And I think the challenge I see, because especially me, my friends, my age group, young kids, babies, primary school, it's just so busy, it's so full on, there's not a lot of space.
Yeah.
And often what has been a beautiful relationship and romantic or whatever is just overrun with children and school and sports, running kids around to gymnastics and whatever.
Yeah.
It's like there's not a lot of space,
Yeah.
literally, and it's not just a complaint. There's literally, plus you still got to work and you still got a mortgage and whatever. And I think that's where at those times you need to be try extra hard. Let things go.
Yes.
Don't hold things against each other. Cut each other some slack. But then on the flip side of that, make sure you do have times, even if you've got to put it in your diary, where you sit down, talk about your relationship, talk about the sexual side. It's not that there's not enough time to have those conversations, but when you're really busy with a young family, maybe you've got to schedule it with your wife next week.
Yeah.
As opposed to we're just going to organically have cups of tea and just sit out in the back porch for 3 hours and talk about stuff. It's probably not going to happen. So I think those things are really critical. Maybe as we finish off, something that I know was a great point you shared with me before we met today around relationships where they get to that point of familiarity and then that starts to breed contempt. And you get into that. And I think a lot of relationships, and the reason I want to make sure we touch on it quickly is because I think a lot of relationships get stuck there.
Yes.
So maybe, how does that happen, first of all? How do you go from romance, love, all this awesome stuff, and then it ends up being, I don't even like you, and you're a pain, and you're disgusting, and how do we get there?
Yeah, so the whole, the familiarity in a relationship when, those first couple of years of, high hormones and sex comes easy and everything, and, the rubber hits the road, those things start to get a bit annoying. We start to retreat, we start to just, we have a tired day and we're not geared up for the romantic date, we just want to watch the footy, and so lots of familiarity starts to come in. The person hasn't cleaned up like they said they would, and so they criticise them, well then you've done this, and so there's this defensiveness that comes along, and I love John Gottman. He's famously discovered the 4 Horsemen, he calls it, so they're the 4 areas that are big predictors in when a relationship is not looking well and not looking healthy.
Yep. And
he would say a predictor of divorce even.
Yeah, wow.
So, and it's tough to look at because you start to go, whoa, well, I can see a bit of that in my relationship,
Can you tell us the 4 things?
Yeah, so he talks about criticism, verbally attacking personality or the character, criticising who the person is. Yep. They didn't do a good job, or that's pretty painful.
You never do a good job.
Exactly.
You're always like this. Yeah, we get
very
into that
generalised.
Very absolute language.
Yes.
You are this.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
very
unhelpful.
much. So
you would never talk to anyone else like that.
Exactly.
The person you want to have sex with, the person you want to live your life with, you start talking and you're always like this, and you never. It's just crazy.
Yes, and so there's no, obviously the communication is broken down because there's no assertive communication. There's no, oh, you're looking a bit down today. What's going on? We're not in that space at all. It's all criticism. The defensiveness in our the next horseman is a defensiveness that comes along. We want to defend our place. Who we are. We victimise ourselves. We're self-protecting. Our partner might come to us about something we've done, but we'll deflect. All those things to try and. And so again, it's a lack of communication, and we're at war and at odds with each other.
And that probably, for me, when I deal with couples, it's probably the number one thing.
Yeah.
That's always there once they get to hey, Pastor Kay, can you help us?
Yeah.
It's like they've just become 2 teams. They're meant to be one team.
Yep.
Or maybe they are one team still, they're on the same field, wearing the same uniforms. Yeah. But they're just arguing as if they're enemies.
Yes.
And it's like, this is the total opposite of what you want, and this is the total opposite of how a team works.
Exactly.
It's like, it's a civil war.
Yeah.
You should be fighting for each other, and watching each other's back, but you're fighting against each other. It's like never going to work. Like, and would you really want your partner to like lay down arms and surrender and you become the tyrant?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want that anyway, do you? So, but that's kind of what you're asking for.
Exactly.
Like, let's fight until you like put up the white flag and I'll become the tyrant of the household and you be my slave. Like.
And then we get cranky because like, oh, they're so weak, you know, and they're emasculated.
Yeah, you get the passiveness and that.
Exactly.
And that doesn't work either.
Yeah, and which comes to the next one, which is actually Stonewalling. It's one of the next 4 horsemen he talks about, you know, with withdrawing, avoiding conflict and going quiet. And this, John talks about this as being what predominantly it happens in men more than women.
I was going to say, I've seen that a lot. Well, they just disappear.
Yeah.
I often use the word passive.
Yeah.
Just go passive, disappear.
Yep.
As if they're being helpful. I think they tell themselves the story that I'm being humble, I'm being gracious, I'm being patient, but it's like, no, you've just disappeared.
Yeah.
Like you're passive, you're not there.
Yeah.
You're not assertive, you're not talking up.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
It's quite powerful when you can actually identify it with them, with the couple, what's going on. Because quite often the woman, the female, because this is, I don't want to just pick sides here, but often this is what happens. It's the female going, well, they just stonewall and they just walk away and then they stop talking to me and he won't talk for a day or so and they get all really angry with each other and everything and they're just shut down.
I've got some advice for you, just nag more. That will help. Many a man has come back to love and romance through a nagging wife. But I know for women, like, it's funny because maybe this is generalisation, but maybe they fall into the nagging thing a bit easier. Maybe men fall into the disappear, passive a bit easier. But it's just so counterintuitive to think that by nagging them, they're going to come running back.
Isn't it funny, though, that there's actually a scripture in the Bible about women stop nagging because it's like a dripping tap?
Even God had to comment on that one.
Had
it's
to
so
kind
obvious.
of intervene and go, right, you know, just saying.
It's a problem.
Yeah. But, you know, that is a big one. And he even goes further to talk about what happens there is that it's psychological flooding that goes on. And for men, there's so much emotion and they don't know how to respond, that they just get flooded.
That's why they withdraw. Okay. Yeah.
So they're just like hit with, I don't know how to even cope here.
Yep.
And so it's a psychological, it's flooding, and it's actually physiological.
Yes.
And so I think when guys actually are told that, they're kind of a little bit relieved because it's like,
it makes sense.
Kind of making sense here. Yeah. And so for them, it's really about coming back or taking some space, come back, let's have a conversation now. Being aware. Again, it's lack of awareness in relationships. All these relationships are reactive all the time.
Very good.
This reacting in what they're doing and saying. So the defensive, stonewalling all comes in. And because of that, the contempt starts to come in. And that he talks about that when contempt is in a relationship, it's really, he can even predict how long the marriage is going to last.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
it makes sense.
It's going to last 6 months, really. There's contempt, there's disgust, they don't...
Well, it's already in the death phase, the death rattle, so to speak. Yeah, it's very hard to come back from that. You know, it would take a lot of self-awareness, a lot of humility, a lot of repentance and forgiveness.
Yeah.
A lot of people just don't have the capacity for that and don't really want to at the end of the day. And I think it feeds into that ridiculous story we tell ourselves as humans that it'll be better on the other side, or grass is greener, like it'll be better not being married. And I just don't think it is, really.
No.
I mean, of course, if it's abusive relationship or there's, you know, blatant cheating or whatever, I think, you know, there's a lot of grounds there for separation. But if it's just you kind of both got stuck and then you both just fell into stonewalling, retreating, nagging and whatever, and it's like, well, you can get out of that, you know, but do you want to?
Exactly.
And do you want to, you know, swallow a bit of eat some humble pie? You know, it's better doing that. And you must go blue in the face with couples. This is a better path. It may seem difficult, but it's a better path.
Yep.
You know, just the idea like of divorcing and remarrying, and it's a lot of work. This would be easier, going this path.
But it's incredible that when they're in that place of contempt and you see it in the body language and the legs are crossed and they've got their backs to each other, and you think, oh, you've come a bit late, guys. It is the end, and it's so sad because that all this stuff they're carrying with them is just going to go into the next relationship.
Exactly right.
And often it's second for the other person. You can imagine all that coming into a next one.
Well, statistically, second marriages fail more than first marriages, and third marriages fail more than second marriages. So even in that sense, it's not obvious that people carry it in. Yeah. But again, if they're the problem in a relationship, then it's easy to tell yourself the story that the next person I phone won't be the problem.
Yeah,
because again, you're not. Look, it's been really good, Dal. I think we're going to have to do this again.
Yeah,
There's just so much.
There is so much.
But I really appreciate your vulnerability. It's not the easiest topic, and just talking about it. I just think that people are going to love this podcast, and it's going to be like, please, let's have more. Let's have more. I think we should keep talking about it, and really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's something that I do see as really vital, it's vital for relationships. It does grieve me, the distortion around sex in society, and and I think that if more good, healthy communication could get out there, and awareness, and that my hope is that people would start to seek it after themselves, and start to recognise, I can have a better relationship here, and I want to, and I have a right to, and I think that's something that's really important to know, even for people who are abused, that you have a right to a good, healthy sexual relationship. You have a right for that, and to fight for it. And I think every relationship, if you can fight for that, you go, I want this.
Super. That's a great thing to finish on. Thank you.
I trust you were impacted by that Leadership Lessons podcast. I would love to hear your thoughts about today's podcast. Please comment down below, and please review the podcast and share it with a friend. Doing this inspires us and helps others to find the podcast. See you next time.